Since its release late last year, the M1 chip has made Apple's MacBook Air go from being a laptop that couldn't last 5 minutes before heating up to 100 degrees to a laptop that performs better than their own 16-inch MacBook that starts at $2,000, all for the price of $999. And with Apple's educational pricing, the laptop drops to $899 with all this power. But is it enough for most students, or should you look to upgrade parts of it? Well, let's find out. Today I have the M1 Macbook Air base model with 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. Over here that starts at $899, and I also have the M1 MacBook Air upgraded version that has 16GB of RAM and 1TB of storage that starts at $1,600. Also a reminder that Apple is providing a bundle for students. This means that you're going to be able to get free AirPods first generation with any purchase of an iPad or a Mac device. This offer typically ends in September, so if you're going to purchase a MacBook, purchase it before then. I've had the $1,600 version as my daily driver for 5 months now, and I've had this M1 MacBook Air base model for a week, so let's see how they compare. Real quick, before we compare them, let's talk about the design. Both of these have an identical design, so you're not going to see any visual difference. For example, you're going to get two Thunderbolt 3 ports, you're going to get the very thin design, and you're going to get the new fanless design. That means that your laptop is going to be completely silent. Pretty neat, right? Let's start with the differences in specs. Although both of these have the exact same design, there is one difference in the processor. Both laptops have the M1 chip, but the M1 chip inside of the base model only has 7 GPU cores instead of the 8 GPU cores that come inside of any of the upgraded versions. Like seriously, any upgrade you do to this laptop will give you that extra core. Why Apple didn't include this for the base model is beyond me. This lack of a core results in a couple frames being dropped in games, but you aren't buying a MacBook for gaming, you're buying it for productivity, school, or because you're part of the ecosystem. So this difference is very minimal. Also, if you don't know what the M1 chip is, it was released late last year by Apple, and it combines the GPU, CPU, and RAM into a singular chip that provides a great leap in performance, which explains why it's replacing all of the Intel chips in Apple's lineups. And if you want a more in-depth review of the MacBook Air, that video is in the corner. However, there is another factor that affects performance, the RAM, so let's talk about its importance. Let's start with the question, how far will 8GB of RAM get you? Assuming that your normal workflow consists of having dozens of Chrome tabs open, Spotify, and one large application, well, I think it's going to get you pretty far. For example, if you have 24 Chrome tabs open, Spotify, and a large application, let's say DaVinci Resolve, a video editing software, there is still over a gigabyte of memory left. That 1 GB of memory is going to allow people to open up significantly more tabs, and to be fair, DaVinci Resolve is a pretty large application that makes up a big chunk of those 8 GB of memory, and I'm going to assume that most students are probably not going to be video editors, so they're going to have a different application that's less demanding in terms of RAM, like the Office Suite opened up, so that also opens up space for more tabs and applications. But what if you're a student with a more demanding workflow? Well, that's where issues start to arise with the base model's 8 GB of RAM. I personally video edit on my laptop, and the video files that I have to have open coupled with a bunch of other applications that I have open at the same time easily eat away at 8 GB of RAM. Knowing that I was going to be using a RAM demanding application was the biggest factor that pushed me to get the upgraded version as opposed to the base model. Let me show you what I can have open on the 16 GB instead of the 8 GB. So currently I have over 60 tabs open across Safari and Chrome. I have Spotify open, I have Final Cut Pro, a video editing software, and I have Visual Studio Code. All of this for a little over 12 GB of RAM. That's almost 4 GB of RAM that I have available to open up larger applications or a crap ton more tabs, so that's pretty flipping great. Now, when I was choosing between the two, the question that allowed me to decide which one to pick was, is 8 GB of RAM reliable enough for the next 4 years and beyond? So let's discuss it. For most students, once they start to advance their degree, especially STEM students, they start to use more and more demanding applications that easily start to eat away at your RAM. A friendly reminder that you can't upgrade the RAM once you purchase one of these MacBooks, particularly because it's part of unified memory, it's what Apple calls it, that's literally integrated to the CPU. Apple charges $200 for the upgrade, which is honestly pretty high compared to other manufacturers that charge between $80 to $100. but I think it can be a pretty good investment, especially if it means that your laptop will be able to keep up over the years. And that's why I went with the 16GB version instead of the 8GB version. That being said, if you don't think your workflow is going to be that demanding or that it won't really increase over the years, well then 8GB of RAM is going to be pretty flipping great, and you're going to be happy with the money you're saving. Moving on, how does the user experience compare between the two? Well, honestly, both are really smooth. And just like Apple advertises, the M1 chip works seamlessly with Mac applications. Literally, you can open up Mac applications in seconds. And the battery life is identical. You're gonna get between 10 to 12 hours with both of these machines, depending on what you're doing. Overall, the user experience between the two is pretty much identical. These machines are really freaking smooth. And for crying out loud, Apple's own MacBook Pro 16-inch that costs $2,000 doesn't perform as well as these machines. Now let's move on to storage. You may have noticed that I upgraded my storage to 1TB over the 256GB storage that's on the base model. The amount of storage needed will vary by student, and it's not going to affect your performance. The SSD speeds in both of these laptops is identical, so the only benefit you receive from upgrading the storage is, well, more space for applications and files. Honestly, other than the one GPU core and a change in RAM, both laptops perform identically. So what is my final consensus after using both for a while? Well, if you're a high school student in search of a laptop that's going to help you with basic productivity like web browsing and using the Office suite, well then there's no need to upgrade from the base model. However, if you're a college student, and particularly if your workflow is likely to get more and more demanding over the years, the $200 upgrade to 16GB of RAM is a necessity. Upgrading the storage is also a pretty good idea. I typically recommend about 512GB, but if you're unsure and you need a little bit of guidance, I have a laptop guide video, and you should just skip to the RAM and storage section. Also, next week I'll be comparing this MacBook Air to the MacBook Pro, so hit the bell to be notified when that drops. I hope I was able to help you identify whether or not you needed to upgrade. If you enjoyed, please hit the like button down below and subscribe. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. And until next time, adios.